So for today's topic, I will be talking about the current pandemic, which is the COVID-19. So for today's main objective, I will clarify confusions between COVID-19 and also SARS-CoV-2, and then explain timeline of pandemic in the world, explain how SARS-CoV-2 infect ourselves, to state symptoms of COVID-19 from mild to middle and how to manage it, and lastly to describe ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19. So as we all know, the current pandemic is called the COVID-19 pandemic. It is caused by the severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, or known as SARS-CoV-2. So COVID-19 is the name of the disease, while SARS-CoV-2 is the name of the virus that caused the disease. And here, as you can see, this is the image of the SARS-CoV-2, the virus itself. So SARS-CoV-2 is actually under the coronavirus family, and you guys can see there are some spikes and also a crown-like structure on the surface of the spikes. Next, I will be talking about the timeline of pandemic in the world history. So, in the year 1918, the world had been struck by the Spanish flu. It was caused by H1N1 virus, and it also spread worldwide during the year 1918 until 1919. So about 500 million people were infected by the Spanish flu, and total number of deaths were 50 million people. Next is the 1957 until 1958 Asian flu. So within 6 months, about 14,000 people died, and unfortunately, second wave in the year 1958 followed that causes an estimated total about 1.1 million deaths globally. Fortunately, a vaccine was developed to combat the flu virus. And then next, we have the 1981 HIV and AIDS. About 35 million people worldwide have died because of AIDS. And unfortunately, a cure is yet to be found. And then next, we have the 2003 SARS, which is caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome. So it was possibly started with bats, and then it spread to cats, and then to humans in China, and then it follows by 26 other countries. In total, about 8,096 people were infected by the SARS, and 774 people died because of the SARS pandemic. And then lastly, we have the 2019 COVID-19. So it was officially a pandemic after barreling through 114 countries in 3 months, and it also infected about 118,000 people. So COVID-19 is caused by a novel coronavirus. It is a new coronavirus strain that has not been previously found in people. This is the summary of the timeline of the pandemic. And then this is the highlight of the talk today. How SARS-CoV-2 infect ourselves. Have you guys ever wondered how it infects ourselves? Well, I am going to talk a little bit about how the SARS-CoV-2 infects ourselves. So firstly, a SARS-CoV-2 will enter our nose or mouth, and then it will float in the airway until it brushes against a lung cell that has an ACE2 receptor. So as you guys can see, this is the coronavirus, and this is the ACE2 on the surface of the lung cell. So it will float in the airway, and then when it meets the ACE2 receptor, it will bind together. So the virus infects the cell by fusing its oily membrane with the membrane of the cell. So basically, the oily membrane of the SARS-CoV-2, it will fuse with the membrane of the cell. It will join together with the membrane of the cell. So once the SARS-CoV-2 are inside the cell, it will release a snippet of genetic material called RNA. So this is the viral RNA, or what we call as ribonucleic acid. And then as the infection progresses, the machinery of the cell will start to churn out new spikes, will start to produce new spikes, and then also other proteins, so that it will form more copies of the coronavirus. So this is the machinery of the cell, and as you guys can see, this is the new spikes and also other proteins. Yeah, it produces more spikes and more proteins. So that if the machinery of the cell produce more spikes and proteins, it will form more copies of the coronavirus. So new copies of the virus are assembled and carried to the outer edges of the cell. Okay. So each infected cell can release millions of copies of the virus before the cell finally breaks down and dies. So our infected cell, when we got infected by the SARS-CoV-2, our cell will produce millions of copies before it finally breaks down and dies. And then it also can infect nearby cells, or maybe end up as a droplets that will escape the lungs. So as you can see, this is the first cell that enter our lung cell, and then this is the new copies. Okay. So today, there are no specific vaccine or medicine for COVID-19. Treatments are still under investigation and will be tested through clinical trials, say the World Health Organization. So this is what a characteristic of possible vaccine should have. So it should help the body to produce antibodies that will target the SARS-CoV-2, and also it should prevent the SARS-CoV-2 from infecting our cells. So flu vaccine also works in similar way, but the antibodies produced by the flu vaccine will not combat the SARS-CoV-2. Yeah, it will not fight, it will not kill the SARS-CoV-2. So as you guys can see, this is the flu vaccine. This is the flu vaccine. The flu vaccine will produce flu antibody, and flu antibody will only target the flu virus. Okay, as you guys can see, the flu antibody will bind with the spikes of the virus. Meanwhile, a potential coronavirus vaccine will produce a coronavirus antibody, which then will bind to the SARS-CoV-2, the virus itself. Okay. So COVID-19 affects different people in different ways. Most infected people will develop mild to moderate illness and recover without hospitalization. So this is the symptoms of the coronavirus. We have the most common symptoms, less common symptoms, and also the serious symptoms. So under the most common symptom, if you are infected by the SARS-CoV-2, this is probably the common symptoms that you will show, or maybe some other people will show. One of them is fever, dry cough, and also tiredness. And this is the less common symptoms, which is anxious and pain, sore throat, diarrhea, and lastly we have the serious symptoms, which is difficulty in breathing, chest pain or pressure, loss of speech or movement. So on average, it takes about 5 to 6 days from when someone is infected with the virus for the symptoms to show. And maybe sometimes it can take up to 14 days. So when you are infected, the average day for you to show the symptoms is about 5 to 6 days. But sometimes it can also show after 14 days. So however, fortunately, we also can manage the symptoms as the virus runs its course. This is done by getting a lot of rest, drinking plenty of water to stay hydrated, and also taking pain relievers such as paracetamol or maybe Panadol. So if the symptoms appears to be getting worse, you need to start to visit the hospital or call the doctor. So lastly is to prevent the spread of COVID-19. So first, this is the common the common way to stop the spread of COVID-19. So first is by cleaning your hands often by using soap. This is an example of soap. So you need to use soap and water to cleanse your hand, or maybe an alternative way, or what we call a common thing that people always do is by using this hand sanitizer. Okay, and then we also need to maintain social distancing and wear a mask, especially when you are unhealthy. Prevent yourself from touching your eyes, your nose, your mouth, and then when you are coughing or sneezing, cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow like this, or maybe using a tissue. And also stay home if you are unwell. And then if you have a fever, cough, and difficulty in breathing, start to seek for medical health attention. So for the conclusion, it is important for us to stop the spread of COVID-19 because it is much more than a health crisis. It is considered to be a global crisis, and it also stresses every country that has been affected because it creates potential of devastating social, economic, and political effects. Hence, it requires all of the society to limit the spread of COVID-19. And this is the sources that I made use of when producing this presentation slide. And then lastly, thank you for listening, and I hope you guys enjoy the video.